Stay away from here.
I buried my father 7 years ago. Tonight, I found 15 men weeping at his grave, and one of them was the most dangerous man in New York. Marcus Sinclair, 45 years old, CEO of Sinclair Tech, an $8 billion empire built on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. A man who'd forgotten how to grieve until he saw a killer crying at his father's tombstone. The man in the center, silver-haired, moving like a predator, even in mourning, placed an envelope on my father's headstone. I could see the thickness from 30 feet away. Cash. A lot of it. Then he whispered something in Italian that made my blood freeze. Perdonami, David. Ho folito a proteggerlo. Forgive me, David. I failed to protect him. Protect him, protect him. Protect him from what? The rain started exactly at 11:47 p.m., as if Connecticut's October sky had been waiting for me to arrive before opening up. I killed the headlights of my Aston Martin 200 yards from Oakwood Cemetery's iron gates, letting the car roll to a silent stop beneath an oak tree that had probably witnessed a century of grief. My father always said I cared too much about appearances. He was right. But tonight, vanity might have saved my life. The cemetery sprawled across 12 acres of manicured lawn and ancient monuments, the kind of place where old money buried its secrets in marble and granite. David Sinclair's plot sat on a gentle rise near the eastern wall, beneath a Japanese maple that turned blood red every autumn. I'd chosen the spot 7 years ago, still numb from shock, still refusing to believe that a man who'd survived 68 years of careful living could be felled by a simple heart attack. But as I stepped out of the car, the October wind carrying the salt smell of Long Island Sound, I wasn't thinking about cardiac arrests or mortality. I was thinking about the email that had arrived at 9:14 p.m., sender unknown, message brief. Your father's grave. Midnight, come alone, come quiet. You'll understand everything. I'd ignored 17 similar messages over the past 7 years. Conspiracy theorists, trolls, people who read about David Sinclair's death and decided it was too convenient, too clean for a man who'd built a technology empire from nothing and retired at 60 to pursue philanthropic interests. But this email was different. It included a photograph, my father's headstone, taken at an angle that suggested the photographer had been standing exactly where I stood now, in the shadow of this oak tree. And in the corner of the image, barely visible in the twilight, a figure in a black suit. The rational part of my brain, the part that had turned Sinclair Tech from my father's modest startup into a dominant force in AI defense systems, screamed that this was a setup, a trap. Marcus Sinclair, tech billionaire, lured to a deserted cemetery at midnight. The headlines would write themselves. But I'd stopped listening to the rational part 3 months ago, when I'd found my father's hidden safe deposit box. The wind picked up, rustling through the maple skeletal branches, and that is when I saw them. 15 figures in black suits, arranged in a perfect circle around my father's grave. My first instinct was to run. My second was to call the police. My third, the one I actually followed, was to crouch behind a marble angel statue, my $4,000 Tom Ford suit soaking into the mud, and watch. They stood motionless. These men, not standing casually, not shifting weight or checking phones, standing with military precision, hands clasped in front of them, faces tilted downward toward the granite headstone that read, David James Sinclair, 1949 to 2017, beloved father, visionary, friend. The rain intensified, turning from drizzle to downpour in seconds, and still they didn't move. Water streamed down their faces, expensive faces. I noted, even from this distance, I could see the quality of their suits, the shine of Italian leather shoes, the glint of watches that cost more than most people's cars. These weren't mourners. This was a ritual. The man at the head of the circle moved first, tall, maybe 6'3", with silver hair that gleamed even in the darkness. He wore his suit like armor, every line precise, every movement controlled. When he took one step forward, the circle contracted with him, maintaining perfect geometry. He knelt. Not the slow, careful kneel of an old man, but the deliberate, controlled descent of someone who'd spent a lifetime moving with purpose. His knee touched the wet grass directly in front of the headstone, and he reached into his jacket. I tensed, my hand instinctively reaching for the phone in my pocket. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out an envelope. Even in the rain-blurred darkness, I could see it was thick, very thick. He placed it gently at the base of the headstone, his hand lingering on the granite for a moment that stretched too long. Then he began to speak Italian. Fluid, emotional Italian that carried across the cemetery, despite the rain's percussion on stone and earth. I'd taken 2 years of Italian in college, enough to order wine and impress dates. But this was different. This was the Italian of old country roots, of phrases passed down through generations, of words weighted with history and blood. But 3 phrases cut through clearly per Denami. David. Forgive me, David. Ho Felito. I failed. Protegger tuo figlio. I will protect your son. The world tilted. Your son. Me. The silver-haired man pressed his forehead against the headstone. His shoulders shook. And then I heard it. A sound so raw, so visceral, it made my chest tighten. He was crying. Not weeping. Not sniffling, crying. Deep, body-racking sobs that spoke of grief, so profound it had been aged in darkness for years. The kind of crying that came from a place most people spent their entire lives trying to avoid. And he wasn't alone. One by one, the 14 other men bowed their heads. Some touched their chests, over their hearts. Others made the sign of the cross. One man, younger than the rest, maybe 30, actually fell to his knees, his hands clasped in prayer. The rain pounded harder, thunder rolled across the sound, and 15 men in $1,000 suits mourned my father like he was their own. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, switching to camera mode, zooming in as far as the lens would allow. The facial recognition software I developed for Sinclair Tech's government contracts was installed on my personal device, a habit born from paranoia and too many years reading my father's warnings about staying aware of your surroundings. I captured every face, every angle. The software would run the images against every database I had access to, legal and less legal. The silver-haired man rose slowly, wiping his face with the back of his hand in a gesture so human it seemed wrong on someone who radiated that much controlled violence. He said something to the others, too quiet now for me to catch, and they began to disperse, but not scattered, not rushed. With the same military precision they'd arrived with, they moved toward a line of black SUVs parked on the cemetery's service road. Engines purred to life like sleeping predators awakening. One by one, the vehicles rolled away into the night, taillights disappearing like dying embers. The silver-haired man was the last to leave. He stood at my father's grave for another minute, hands in his pockets, head bowed. Then he reached out and touched the headstone one final time. A gesture of such tenderness it made something crack inside my chest. He turned and walked toward the final SUV. Before getting in, he paused, scanning the cemetery. For one frozen heartbeat, I was certain he was looking directly at me, that he could see through the marble angel and the darkness and the rain to where I crouched in the mud. But he got in the vehicle. The door closed with a solid thunk. The SUV rolled away. I waited 5 full minutes, my heart hammering, before I emerged from my hiding place. My legs had gone numb from crouching, and I nearly fell as I stumbled toward my father's grave. The envelope sat where the silver-haired man had placed it, already soaked through. I picked it up with trembling hands. It wasn't sealed. Inside, bundled stacks of $100 bills. I didn't count them, but I knew wealth when I saw it. 20, maybe $30,000. And tucked between the bills, a card-heavy cardstock, expensive embossed text, Vincent Castellano, import New Hort, export Brooklyn, New York. No phone number, no address. Just a name and a business description, so generic it screamed cover story. I turned the card over. On the back in elegant script, debt paid. Ask your sister about honor. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, trying to process what I'd witnessed. My phone buzzed the facial recognition software, completing its scan. 15 hits, all confirmed identities. All with criminal records. Vincent Castellano, racketeering, suspected money laundering, 3 murder investigations. No convictions. Anthony Greco, weapons trafficking, assault with a deadly weapon. Marco Salvatore, drug distribution, witness intimidation. The list went on. 14 men with rap sheets that read like a greatest hits of organized crime. And at the center of it all, Vincent Castellano, a name that appeared in exactly 3 newspaper articles over the past decade, always in the background of charity galas or business openings, never charged, never even officially questioned. But the FBI's organized crime database painted a different picture. Vincent the Architect Castellano, suspected head of the Castellano crime family, operating out of Brooklyn with tendrils reaching into Manhattan, Queens, and across the river into New Jersey. Money laundering through legitimate businesses, political connections that kept him insulated from prosecution. A ghost who ran an empire from the shadows. This man had wept at my father's grave. I pulled up my sister's contact. Elena Sinclair Hayes, 7 years younger than me, living in a Connecticut suburb with her husband Richard and their perfect life that I'd stopped trying to be part of 3 years ago after our last blowout fight about the family business. My thumb hovered over the call button. Ask your sister about honor. It was 9:47 a.m. Elena would be asleep. Richard would be annoyed. I didn't care. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, voice thick with sleep and immediate worry. Marcus, what is wrong? Are you hurt? I am at Dad's grave, I said, watching rain streak across my windshield. There were people here, 15 men. They left money on the headstone. Silence, too long of a silence. Elena. Her voice caught. What kind of men? The kind with criminal records. The kind who run organized crime syndicates. The kind who knew Dad somehow. And I have no idea why. I paused, letting the weight of my next words settle. Vincent Castellano. Does that name mean anything to you? The silence stretched longer this time. I heard movement sheets rustling, footsteps on hardwood, a door closing softly. Elena, talk to me. Marcus, you need to leave this alone. Her voice had changed, not sleepy anymore, alert, frightened. 15 men just performed some kind of ritual at our father's grave, and their leader left a card that specifically mentioned you. I am not leaving anything alone. Please. The word came out as a whisper. Please, Marcus. Dad wouldn't want you digging into this. Dad is dead, and I just found out that the man who may have killed him, Vincent, didn't kill him. The words burst out, sharp and immediate. Then softer, horrified, that is not. Marcus, just come home. We'll talk in the morning. How do you know that name? My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How do you know Vincent Castellano? I don't. I heard Dad mention it once. Years ago, it is nothing. Elena had always been a terrible liar. When we were kids, I could tell when she'd stolen cookies from the kitchen or broken mom's vase, just by the way her voice climbed half an octave. It was climbing now. You are lying. Marcus, I am coming over now. No, Richard he is sleeping, and I don't want to wake him. And we can talk tomorrow. I promise. I hung up. The drive from Oakwood Cemetery to Elena's house in Greenwich took 35 minutes. 35 minutes for my mind to cycle through every possible explanation and reject them all. David Sinclair had been a tech entrepreneur. He'd built Sinclair Tech from his garage in 1985, riding the personal computer revolution to modest success, then pivoting to cybersecurity in the late 90s just as the internet was exploding. Smart, careful, ethical to a fault, he'd sold the company to me for $1 on his 60th birthday, citing a desire to live a little before it was too late. 3 years later, he was dead. Heart attack in his study. No warning. No history of cardiac problems, just gone. And I'd accepted it. Grief-stricken, overwhelmed with suddenly running a company I'd only been groomed to manage, not lead. I'd accepted the medical examiner's report and buried my father and thrown myself into work hard enough to forget the questions that nagged at the edges of my consciousness. But 3 months ago, I'd found the safe deposit box. It had taken a year of sorting through my father's estate. He'd been meticulous about some things, chaotic about others, and I'd nearly overlooked the key taped to the back of a framed photograph in his study. A small brass key with a number stamped on it and no identifying bank information. I'd tried every bank in Connecticut before finding the right one. A small credit union in Stamford. The kind of place that still used paper ledgers and remembered customers by name. The box had been registered under a name I didn't recognize, Thomas Wright, but my father's signature was on the access card. Inside, a flash drive, 3 notebooks filled with my father's handwriting, and a photograph of a young man I'd never seen before, standing next to my father, both of them smiling. The notebooks were coded. I still hadn't cracked the full cipher, but I'd picked out enough words to make my stomach drop: surveillance, witness protection, FBI contact, Castellano family. The flash drive was encrypted with military-grade security that even my best engineers couldn't crack without risking data corruption. And the photograph. The young man looked familiar in ways I couldn't place. Something about the eyes, the set of his jaw. Elena's house appeared through the rain, a sprawling colonial with white pillars and a circular driveway that screamed, new money trying to look like old money. Lights blazed from the first floor. She'd given up on pretending to sleep. I parked behind Richard's BMW and walked to the front door. It opened before I could knock. Elena stood in the doorway in a silk robe, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her face pale. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara smudged beneath them. "Marcus, please don't do this." I pushed past her into the marble foyer. "Where is Richard? Business trip, Chicago. He won't be back until Thursday." She closed the door, leaning against it like she could physically hold back whatever storm I'd brought with me. You can't just show up at 2 in the morning demanding answers. 15 men. Elena. 15 criminals at Dad's grave. Vincent Castellano, crying like he'd lost his own father. $30,000 in cash and a card that mentioned you specifically. I turned to face her. "Start talking." She wrapped her arms around herself, and I noticed for the first time how thin she'd gotten. Elena had always been slender, but this was different. This was the kind of thin that came from stress, from not eating, from carrying weight that wasn't physical. "I can't," she whispered. "You mean you won't?" "I mean I literally can't. Marcus, if I tell you, if you start digging into this, people will die." The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. "What people?" My voice came out calmer than I felt. "You, me, maybe Richard, though I honestly wouldn't." She cut herself off, shaking her head. "It doesn't matter. The point is, Dad kept secrets for a reason, to protect us. And if you start unraveling them now, 7 years later, you'll undo everything he died for. He died for something. The words came out sharper than I intended, or he was killed for something. Elena's eyes widened, and I saw the answer before she spoke. Oh my God. I took a step back. You know. You've known this whole time that Dad was murdered, and you said nothing. I didn't know, not for sure. Not until... She pressed her hands to her face, and when she spoke again, her voice was muffled. Not until Vincent contacted me. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. When? 6 months ago. 6 months. You've been in contact with a mob boss for 6 months, and you didn't think to mention it. He is not. She dropped her hands, and I saw something flash across her face. Anger, maybe, or resignation. Vincent isn't what you think he is. He is not the man in those FBI files. He is complicated. Complicated. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That is your defense. Elena, this man runs drugs, weapons, God knows what else through New York. He is suspected of at least 3 murders. Suspected because there is never enough evidence, never enough witnesses willing to talk. And you are telling me he is complicated. He loved Dad. The words came out fierce, defensive. Whatever else he is, whatever he has done, he genuinely loved our father. And Dad loved him like... She stopped, swallowing hard. Like a son. The silence that followed was broken only by the rain hammering against the windows and the distant rumble of thunder moving across the sound. Explain, I finally said. All of it. Now, Elena moved to the living room, her movements mechanical, and sank onto a white couch that probably cost more than my first car. I followed, remaining standing, my wet suit dripping onto hardwood that definitely cost more than my first car. Dad was FBI, she said it matter. Factly, like she was commenting on the weather. Not officially. Not on any payroll or record. But he worked with them for almost 20 years. Since before you were born. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. That is impossible, is it? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Think about it, Marcus. Really think. A tech entrepreneur with cutting-edge cybersecurity access, government contracts, connections to everyone from Silicon Valley to Washington. He was the perfect asset, and he believed in it. Believed in using his position to help take down the people who hurt others. If this is true, and I am not saying I believe you, why keep it secret? Why not just work for the FBI officially? Because the people Dad was helping them track were too dangerous to risk official channels. Mob families with cops on payroll, politicians in their pockets. Dad was clean, untouchable. No one suspected the mild-mannered tech guy of being anything other than what he appeared to be. She stood, moving to a cabinet and pulling out a bottle of scotch, Dad's favorite brand. I noticed with a pang. She poured 2 glasses without asking if I wanted one. 25 years ago, Dad helped the FBI build a case against the Castellano family. Old man Castellano, Vincent's grandfather, was running everything from Brooklyn. Drugs, prostitution, gambling, murder. A real old-school operation. Dad's tech helped them track the money, crack the communications, build an airtight case. She handed me a glass. I took it but didn't drink. But Vincent was just a kid then, 19 years old, trying to get out. He'd seen what the life did to people. His own father died in a prison fight when Vincent was 16. His mother drank herself to death a year later. The old man, his grandfather, was grooming him to take over. But Vincent wanted out. Let me guess, I said, my voice flat. Dad helped him. Dad gave him a choice. Testify against the family, go into witness protection, start over, or go down with them. Vincent chose testimony. But before the trial, something happened. She took a long drink, the scotch disappearing in 2 swallows. Vincent had a daughter, Gabriella, 8 years old, beautiful little girl from a relationship Vincent had when he was too young and stupid to think about consequences. The family found out Vincent was cooperating. They took Gabriella. My grip tightened on the glass. Dad got her back. Don't ask me how, he never told me the details. But he got her back and put her somewhere safe. Somewhere even Vincent didn't know about, couldn't know about, because the family would have broken him to find her. And in return, Vincent testified. The old man got life. Half the organization went down. Vincent walked away with a new identity, a clean slate. And Dad kept tabs on him. I said slowly, pieces clicking together. Kept him as an asset. Kept him as family. Elena's voice cracked. Marcus, Dad believed people could change. He believed Vincent deserved a second chance. And for 15 years, Vincent proved him right. He built legitimate businesses, stayed clean, stayed away from the life. He and Dad, she shook her head. They were close. Really close. Really close. Dad used to meet with him every few months. Called it checking in on an investment. And then Dad died. And then Dad died. She met my eyes. Heart attack, the medical examiner said. But Vincent didn't believe it. He investigated on his own, used his resources, and he found evidence that someone had poisoned Dad. Made it look like cardiac arrest. The room spun. I sat down hard on the couch beside her. Who? That is what Vincent's been trying to find out for 7 years. He thinks it was someone Dad was investigating. Someone in organized crime who found out about Dad's FBI connection and decided to eliminate the threat. And you've known this for 6 months. Vincent contacted me because he finally had a lead. Someone Dad had been tracking. Someone who might have ordered the hit. But he needed information from Dad's files, things only family would have access to. So he reached out. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. But he needed information from Dad's files, things only family would have access to. Someone who'd been carrying this weight alone, who'd been lying to me for months, who'd been in contact with a man I'd just watched weep at our father's grave. Why didn't you come to me? Because you would have done exactly what you are doing now. You would have charged in, demanded answers, tried to fix everything, and you would have gotten yourself killed. Her voice broke. Vincent said the people who killed Dad are too dangerous, too connected. He said the only way to get justice was slowly, carefully, from the shadows. He said if you got involved, they'd eliminate you too. So your solution was to work with a mob boss behind my back. My solution was to trust the man Dad trusted. The man who has spent 7 years trying to avenge Dad's death. The man who left $30,000 on that grave tonight because he considers it blood money payment for a debt he can never repay. Elena stood, moving to the window, staring out at the rain. Vincent's not the enemy, Marcus. He is the only one who cares enough about Dad to risk everything. And if you expose him now, if you go after him or his organization, you'll destroy the one person who might actually get us justice. I sat there, my untouched scotch warming in my hand, my wet suit probably ruining her expensive couch, my entire understanding of my father's life crumbling around me. I need to meet him, I finally said. Number Elena, no Marcus. Vincent was very clear. If you ever found out about any of this, I was supposed to convince you to walk away. Because the moment you enter his world, you become a target, and he won't be able to protect you. I stood, setting the scotch down on a glass coffee table that probably cost more than some people's cars. I don't need his protection. What I need are answers. And if Vincent Castellano has them, then that is where I am going. Marcus, please. Dad kept secrets to protect us. Fine, I can accept that. But he is dead now, and those secrets got him killed. I am not going to sit in my tower and pretend everything's fine while his murderer walks free. Tell me how to contact Vincent, or I'll find him myself." Elena stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Fear maybe, or something darker. "You sound just like him," she whispered. "Just like Dad. Charging toward danger because you think you can fix everything. Tell me how to contact him." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, typed something, and showed me the screen. A number, no name, no additional information. "Text him, say David's son wants to talk. He'll respond." I pulled out my own phone and saved the number. "Anything else I should know?" Elena laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Everything else you should know would take hours. And I honestly don't know if telling you would save your life or end it. Then I guess I'll find out." I walked toward the door, my mind already racing ahead to what I would say, how I would approach this, what questions to ask first. "Marcus." I turned back. Elena stood silhouetted against the rain-streaked window, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "Vincent's dangerous, not because he wants to be, but because he has to be. Promise me you'll remember that. Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." It was a lie, and we both knew it, but she nodded anyway, and I left her standing in that expensive house with its expensive furniture and its expensive secrets. Outside, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. I sat in my car and pulled up the number Elena had given me. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "David's son wants to talk." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came faster than I expected. 3 words, "Tomorrow noon, Brooklyn." Then an address I didn't recognize. I started the engine and pulled out of Elena's driveway, watching her house shrink in the rearview mirror. Somewhere behind those lit windows, my sister was probably pouring herself another scotch. Maybe crying, maybe calling Vincent to warn him. But I didn't care. For 7 years, I'd lived with questions that gnawed at the edges of my mind. Questions about my father's death, his life, the secrets he'd kept tomorrow. I'd start getting answers, even if those answers destroyed everything. The address Vincent sent led me to Red Hook, Brooklyn, a neighborhood that had spent the last 2 decades trying to gentrify its way out of its industrial past. Expensive cafes now occupied former warehouses. Artists' lofts looked down on streets where bodies used to turn up with disturbing regularity. Vincent's building stood out, a 5-story brick structure at the end of a cobblestone street. Windows tinted so dark they looked like missing teeth in a smile. No signage, no indication of what business operated inside. Just a single steel door and a camera mounted above it, lens tracking my approach. I parked across the street, watching noon sun beat down. Yesterday's rain already evaporated into humid air that tasted like salt and exhaust. My phone showed 11:58 a.m. At exactly noon, the steel door opened. A man emerged mid-40s, built like he'd spent time in prison yards, wearing a suit that didn't quite hide the shoulder holster beneath. He looked directly at my car and gestured. "Come in. No going back now." The interior was nothing like I'd expected. Where I'd anticipated dim corridors and the smell of cigarettes, I found marble floors and art that probably cost 6 figures per piece. Recessed lighting, the faint scent of espresso and expensive cologne. The man who'd summoned me said nothing, just led me to an elevator with brass doors that looked original to the building. We rode up in silence, my reflection staring back at me from polished metal, a tech CEO playing at being tough, wearing yesterday's clothes and determination I wasn't sure I actually felt. The elevator opened directly into an office that occupied the entire 5th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor, the Statue of Liberty small and green in the distance, and behind a desk made of dark wood that gleamed under recessed lights, Vincent Castellano sat reading a newspaper. He looked different in daylight. Less predator, more businessman. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit Brioni, or something equally expensive, his reading glasses perched on his nose, giving him an almost professorial air. But when he looked up, and those eyes found mine dark brown, almost black, with flecks of gold, that caught the light, I saw the man from the cemetery, the man who'd wept. Marcus Sinclair. He folded the newspaper with precise movements, removed his glasses. You look like him, especially around the eyes. David used to get that same expression when he was about to do something reckless. You knew my father well. I knew him better than most. Vincent gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Please, sit. We have much to discuss, and I prefer conversations to confrontations. I remained standing. You left money on his grave. Why? Because I owed him everything, and cash was the only currency I had that meant nothing. Vincent stood, moving to a sidebar where crystal decanters caught the afternoon light. Whiskey. It is 25-year Macallan, your father's favorite. How do you know that? Because I bought him his first bottle 19 years ago after he saved my life. He poured 2 glasses without waiting for my answer. Elena told you some of it, I assume, otherwise you wouldn't be here. She told me you were FBI witness, that my father helped you. That is the sanitized version. Vincent handed me a glass, his fingers brushing mine in the exchange. They were steady, controlled. The hands of a man who'd done terrible things without trembling. The truth is more complicated, more painful, and significantly more dangerous for you to know. Tell me anyway. Vincent studied me for a long moment, then moved to the windows, staring out at New York Harbor. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer, weighted with memories that seemed to physically hurt him. 25 years ago, I was 19 years old and drowning. My grandfather ran the Castellano family old school operation, drugs and protection rackets and violence that would make your stomach turn. My father had died in prison. My mother drank herself to death grieving him, and the old man, my grandfather, he looked at me and saw his legacy, his future. He took a drink, the whiskey disappearing in one smooth motion. I didn't want that future, but when you are born into that world, wanting out isn't enough. You need help, real help. And your father, Vincent's voice cracked slightly. Your father was the first person who offered it without asking for anything in return. The FBI wanted convictions. Your father wanted me to live. He turned back to face me. There is a difference, Marcus, a profound one. The FBI would have used me up and thrown me away. David saw something in me worth saving. Something even I didn't see yet. He moved back to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a photograph. He slid it across the polished wood. It was the same image I'd found in my father's safe deposit box. Young Vincent, barely more than a boy, standing next to my father, both smiling. But this print had something mine didn't. A date written on the back. The 15th of August, 1999. That was taken the day I entered witness protection. The day I testified against my own family. The day my grandfather looked at me from across that courtroom and promised he'd kill everyone I'd ever loved. Vincent's jaw tightened. He would have kept that promise. He did keep it, for the ones he could reach. Your daughter, Gabriella. Vincent's head snapped up, surprise cracking his controlled exterior. Elena told you. She said my father rescued her. Put her somewhere safe. Safe. Vincent laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Your father put her in witness protection so deep that even I don't know where she is. Haven't seen her in 24 years. She'd be 32 now, married. Maybe kids of her own. I wouldn't know. David said that was the price of her safety, my complete separation, and I paid it. He picked up the photograph, staring at it like it might reveal secrets. Your father understood sacrifice in ways most people never will. He understood that sometimes saving someone means losing them, and he did that for me, for my daughter, for a 19-year-old criminal who'd made every wrong choice possible. And you've spent 25 years trying to repay him. I spent 25 years trying to become the man he believed I could be. Vincent set the photograph down carefully. I built legitimate businesses, stayed away from the life, met with David every few months to prove I was staying clean. He became, Vincent's voice dropped to almost a whisper, he became the father I never had, the man I wanted to be when I looked in the mirror. I sat down finally, my legs suddenly weak. The whiskey burned, going down, familiar and foreign at the same time. Elena said you think he was murdered. I don't think it. I know it. Vincent opened his laptop, turned it to face me. The screen showed medical records, toxicology reports, documents I shouldn't have been able to access. 6 months after David's death, I had his body exhumed, quietly, through channels that don't leave paper trails. The original autopsy found cardiac arrest. My autopsy found traces of aconitine. What is that? Poison derived from wolfsbane. Mimics heart attack symptoms perfectly, metabolizes quickly. By the time the original medical examiner looked at him, it was almost undetectable, almost. But not if you know what to look for. The glass slipped from my hand, whiskey splashing across my pants. I barely noticed. Someone poisoned my father. Someone murdered your father. Vincent closed the laptop, and I've spent 7 years trying to find out who. That is why I went to Elena 6 months ago. I'd exhausted my own resources. I needed access to David's files, his notes, anything that might tell me what he was investigating when he died. And did Elena give you that access? Something flickered across Vincent's face. Guilt, maybe, or calculation. She tried, but David had encrypted everything. Codes she couldn't break, files she couldn't access. All she could give me were fragments, pieces of a puzzle I still haven't solved. I thought about the flash drive in my own safe, the notebooks with their coded entries, the photograph I'd found in that safe deposit box. What if I told you I have those files? Vincent went very still. Do you, maybe? But before I show you anything, I need to know something. I leaned forward. My sister, Elena, how much danger is she in? From external threats? Minimal. I've had people watching her house for 6 months. No one's shown interest in her except her husband's mistress. But that is a different kind of danger. The revelation barely registered. Richard having an affair seemed almost quaint compared to everything else. And from you, I held his gaze. How much danger is she in from you, Vincent? The silence stretched long enough that I heard the building creak, heard distant traffic from the street below, heard my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I would die before harming David's daughter, Vincent finally said, and I believed him. Whatever Elena has done to help me, she did out of love for your father. She deserves your protection, Marcus, not your suspicion. Then why did she seem so frightened when I said I was coming here? Because she knows what I am. Vincent stood, moving back to the windows. I've built legitimate businesses. Yes, I've stayed away from the worst of the life, but I am not clean, Marcus. Not really. There are things I've done, choices I've made to protect those businesses, to protect people I care about. Things that would horrify you. Things that would have disappointed your father deeply. He turned back, and I saw something raw in his expression. Elena's frightened because she knows that once you enter my world, even peripherally, you can't leave unchanged. Your father understood that risk. He took it anyway, because he believed in justice more than he believed in safety. But Elena loves you, and she is terrified. You'll follow David's path straight into a grave beside his. The words hit like physical blows. Someone from your world killed him. Yes. Some money he was investigating through his FBI work. Yes. And you want my help finding them. Vincent studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his dark eyes. No, Marcus, I want you to go home. Delete my number. Tell Elena you met me, found me civilized and boring, and decided your father's death was exactly what it appeared to be. I want you to run your billion-dollar company and sleep in your expensive apartment and live a long, safe, ignorant life. Why? Because that is what David would have wanted, and I owe him enough to honor that, even if it means his killer walks free. I stood slowly, my wet pants sticking to my legs, yesterday's exhaustion settling into my bones. You don't get to decide what my father would have wanted, and you don't get to martyr yourself to some imagined debt. If someone killed him, I am going to find them, with or without your help. Then you'll die trying. Vincent's voice went hard. The people who killed David are too connected, too protected. They've evaded me for 7 years, and I have resources you can't imagine. What makes you think a tech billionaire playing detective will do better? Because I have something you don't. I pulled out my phone, called up the photograph of the flash drive I'd hidden in 3 separate locations. My father's insurance policy. Everything he collected. Everyone he investigated. Encrypted and waiting. He told you he had it, didn't he? Before he died. Vincent's controlled exterior cracked. He mentioned something, but I thought he destroyed it. He hid it. From you, from the FBI, from everyone, because he knew that if it fell into the wrong hands, people would die. I put my phone away. I'll make you a deal, Vincent. Help me decrypt these files. Help me find who killed him, and I'll make sure justice is served. Real justice. The kind my father believed in. And if I refuse, then I'll do it alone. And when I inevitably stumble into whoever killed him, when they come for me the way they came for David, that'll be on your conscience too. Vincent stared at me for a long moment, and I saw calculations running behind those dark eyes. Finally, he nodded once. Your father's files are the key. If we can decrypt them, we find the killer. But Marcus, he moved closer, and I smelled his cologne cedar and something darker. Once we start this, there is no stopping. No turning back. People will die, possibly including us. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my father's grave, about 15 men weeping in the rain, about 7 years of questions that gnawed at my sanity. I've been prepared since the day I buried him. Then we have an accord. Vincent extended his hand. Welcome to the shadows, Marcus Sinclair. I hope you survive long enough to regret it. I shook his hand, his grip firm and cold, and felt the first threads of fate tightening around my throat. Outside, the New York afternoon blazed with heat and possibility. Inside Vincent's office, we planned a war that would bring down an empire. I just didn't know yet that the empire would be my own. The decryption took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of late nights in Vincent's Brooklyn office. My best engineers working alongside his tech specialists. Men who'd learned their skills in less legitimate circumstances. 3 weeks of watching my sister's marriage implode from a distance, Richard's affair becoming an open secret that Elena seemed almost relieved to discover. 3 weeks of learning that my father had lived a double life I'd never suspected. The files were meticulous. 15 years of investigations, carefully documented. Money trails leading from Albanian trafficking rings through shell corporations and into the accounts of people whose names made my stomach drop. Politicians, judges, police chiefs. A network of corruption so vast it seemed impossible. One man had mapped it alone, but David Sinclair hadn't worked alone. The files showed regular contact with FBI handlers, encrypted communications with assets, including Vincent, and a growing obsession with one name that appeared again and again. Richard Hayes. Me brother-in-law. It doesn't make sense, I said, staring at the screen for the 100th time. Vincent stood behind me, his hand resting on my shoulder. A gesture that had become familiar over these weeks, almost brotherly. Your father investigated Richard for 2 years before he died. Vincent said quietly, money laundering through Hayes Investment Group, connections to the Albanian Mafia. Richard was dirty, Marcus, deep into trafficking money, and David was about to expose him. Elena's husband. My voice sounded hollow. She was married to the man who killed our father. We don't have proof Richard gave the order, only that he benefited from David's death. Vincent pulled up another file. Your father had scheduled a meeting with the FBI the week after he died. Was going to hand over everything. Richard's financial crimes, his trafficking connections, names of everyone involved. It would have destroyed him. So he poisoned my father first. That is the theory. Vincent's jaw tightened. But theories don't hold up in court. We need Richard to confess. And I know exactly how to make that happen. The plan was simple. Elegant, dangerous. Elena had agreed to help. After I'd shown her the files, after she'd wept in my arms for an hour, after she'd admitted she'd suspected Richard for months, but was too frightened to act, Vincent would stage a business meeting, offering Richard a lucrative deal involving his import-fake-export operations. Marcus would wire Elena for sound, and when Richard inevitably bragged about eliminating threats to his operation, we'd have him. What I didn't know, what neither Vincent nor I suspected, was that Richard had been planning his own trap. The meeting was set for midnight at a warehouse complex near the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Vincent chose the location. Neutral ground, he'd said. Secure. His people had swept it twice for surveillance. We should have swept it 3 times. I sat in Vincent's surveillance van 2 blocks away, watching Elena through 6 different camera feeds. She wore a wire so small, it was nearly invisible, sewn into her jacket lining. She looked terrified, beautiful and terrified, standing alone in that empty warehouse, waiting for her husband to arrive. This is wrong, I said suddenly. She shouldn't be the bait, she insisted. Vincent's eyes never left the monitors. Said she owed it to David. Owed it to you. If anything happens to her. Nothing will happen. But Vincent's hand moved to the gun holstered at his side. My people have every exit covered. Richard brings anyone besides his driver. We scrub the meeting and extract Elena, clean and simple. Nothing about this felt clean or simple. Richard arrived at 12:07 a.m. in a town car, driver waiting outside. He walked into the warehouse alone, his movements confident, too confident for a man walking into a meeting with a mob boss. Elena, he said, his voice carrying clearly through her wire. What is this about? Your text said urgent. I know what you did. Elena's voice shook, but she held her ground. I know about the money laundering, about the trafficking connections, about Dad. Richard went very still. Then he smiled, a cold expression that made my hands clench into fists. Your father was a problem that needed solving, smart man, but too righteous for his own good, always digging where he shouldn't. He moved closer to Elena. You, on the other hand, I thought you were too weak to ever figure it out. Guess I underestimated David's daughter. We have everything, Elena said. Every file, every transaction. Vincent and Marcus have it all. You are finished, Richard. Vincent. Richard laughed. You mean the man you've been secretly meeting for 6 months? The mob boss your brother is so desperately trying to take down, Elena? Sweetheart, I've known about your little alliance since it started. My blood ran cold. What? Elena's voice cracked. You think I don't monitor your movements, your phone calls? I've been tracking everything, feeding you information, letting you think you were getting close to the truth. Richard pulled out his own phone. But the real truth is much simpler. Vincent Castellano killed your father. That is a lie. Elena backed away. Is it? Richard turned the phone to show her the screen. I couldn't see what it displayed, but Elena's face went white. Aconitine, the poison that killed David. Where do you think it came from? Elena, Vincent's organization moves everything. Drugs, weapons, poison. He had means, motive, and opportunity. No, Elena whispered. Vincent loved Dad. Vincent loved David's protection. Loved having an FBI asset keeping him safe. But David was planning to expose everyone, including Vincent's operations, that weren't quite as legitimate as he claimed. So Vincent eliminated the threat. In the van, Vincent's face had gone deathly pale. That is not. I didn't, Marcus. You know I didn't. But I was staring at the monitors, watching Richard's plan unfold with horrifying clarity. The files you found, Richard continued. Vincent helped you decrypt them. Helped you see exactly what he wanted you to see. Names he wanted to implicate. Evidence pointing everywhere, except at him. He has been manipulating you from the start, Elena. Using you to destroy his competitors while keeping himself clean. Marcus, Vincent's voice was urgent in my ear. None of this is true. You have to believe me. Richard is twisting everything. And now he has your brother, Richard said. Poor Marcus, thinking he is hunting his father's killer. Not realizing he is partnered with the man he is searching for. It is almost poetic. The warehouse doors burst open. Not FBI, not police. Men in tactical gear. At least 20 of them. Weapons raised Richard's private security. Former military contractors who didn't ask questions if the money was right. Elena Sinclair, their leader, announced. You are coming with us, boss's orders. Elena ran. The monitors showed chaos. Elena sprinting for the back exit, security pursuing. Richard shouting orders. Vincent was already moving. Grabbing weapons, calling his own peoples. Stay here, he ordered me. Let my crew handle. I was out of the van before he finished speaking, running toward the warehouse, my heart slamming against my ribs. Every instinct screamed this was suicide. I wasn't trained for combat. I was a CEO who spent his days in boardrooms, not war zones. But Elena was my sister, and I'd already failed one family member. The warehouse was a maze of shipping containers and shadows. I heard gunfire, sharp cracks that echoed off metal walls, saw Vincent's people engaging Richard's security in a firefight that belonged in a war zone, not Brooklyn. I found Elena hiding behind a forklift, her jacket torn, blood on her face from a cut above her eye. Marcus, she grabbed me. Richard has proof. Documents showing Vincent ordered the poison. Phone records of him contacting the supplier. It is all real. It is fabricated. I pulled her toward a side exit I'd seen on the surveillance maps. Richard's been planning this for months, setting Vincent up. He knew we'd eventually decrypt Dad's files, so he created evidence pointing at Vincent. How do you know? Because I know Dad. He trusted Vincent completely, would never have given him that final photograph, that last meeting, if he'd suspected him. Richard's betting we'll turn on each other, that I'll have Vincent arrested, eliminating Richard's only real threat. We made it to the exit. The door was locked. Reinforced steel that wouldn't budge. Behind us, footsteps, heavy boots on concrete. Richard appeared from the shadows, flanked by 4 security contractors. His clothes were pristine, not a hair out of place, like this was just another business transaction. Marcus, finally. He gestured, and his men trained their weapons on us. I've been wanting to have this conversation brother to brother. We're not brothers. Number, thank God for that. Richard pulled out a gun. Sleek, probably expensive, definitely loaded. Your father was in my way. Your sister is a liability, and you, well, you are about to die tragically in a shootout between FBI agents and a notorious mob boss. So convenient how these things work out. You won't get away with this. The words sounded weak, even to my own ears. I already have. Richard smiled. In 10 minutes, FBI tactical teams will raid this warehouse. They'll find Vincent Castellano in the middle of a gunfight. They'll find you, a civilian caught in the crossfire, and they'll find evidence I've carefully planted showing Vincent ordered your father's death. Case closed. Justice served. Except Vincent didn't kill him. You did. Prove it. Richard's smile widened. Oh wait, you can't, because the only evidence is in your encrypted files, which no court will accept without proper chain of custody. Meanwhile, I have airtight documentation showing Vincent's guilt. Guess which version the FBI believes? Elena's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Marcus, I am sorry for everything, for not telling you sooner. The touching goodbye will have to wait. Richard raised his gun, aiming at my chest. Any last words? Marcus, yes. Vincent's voice came from above. We all looked up. Vincent stood on a catwalk 20 feet above us, holding a rifle with practiced ease. His silver hair caught the warehouse lights. His expression was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Drop the weapons, Vincent ordered. All of you now, Richard laughed. You are outnumbered 15-1, Castellano. My people have this building surrounded. You've got maybe 3 men still standing. Basic math says you lose. Basic math doesn't account for federal law enforcement. Vincent gestured behind Richard. FBI tactical teams poured through every entrance, 20 agents in full gear, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. Richard's security contractors immediately dropped their guns, hands raised, recognizing when they were beaten. Richard's face went purple with rage. What is this? This, Special Agent, Sarah Chen stepped forward, badge displayed, is a federal sting operation. Richard Hayes, you are under arrest for the murder of David Sinclair, money laundering, trafficking violations, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have no proof. We have everything. I stepped forward, pulling a small recording device from my pocket, including your confession. The wire wasn't in Elena's jacket, Richard. It was in mine. Every word you said, recorded and transmitted directly to Agent Chen. The color drained from Richard's face. See, here is what you didn't understand about my father, I continued. He didn't trust blindly, not even Vincent. Every asset he worked with, he verified independently, including setting up protocols with the FBI for situations exactly like this. Agent Chen nodded. David Sinclair contacted me 3 days before his death, said if anything happened to him, we should monitor his family closely. Watch for anyone who tried to frame his assets. He specifically mentioned Vincent Castellano and Richard Hayes as the 2 people who might be targeted or might be threats. He was protecting everyone, Vincent said quietly from above. Even me, even you, Marcus, until the very end. Richard lunged for his gun. Vincent's shot took him in the shoulder before he could grab it. Not lethal, but enough to drop him screaming to the concrete. That was for David, Vincent said calmly. Oakwood Cemetery. Autumn again, leaves falling like gold coins around my father's grave. But this time, I wasn't alone. Vincent stood beside me, hands in his pockets, his silver hair catching late afternoon sun. Elena was on my other side, holding flowers, yellow roses, Dad's favorite. And behind us, 15 men in black suits stood in respectful silence. The trial concluded yesterday, I said quietly. Richard got life without parole, trafficking, money laundering first, degree murder. The judge called him a cancer on society. Good, Vincent said simply. Elena placed the roses on the headstone. I still can't believe I didn't see it. 7 years married to Dad's killer. He was careful, I said. Calculated. That is what made him dangerous. Made Vincent's voice carried weight. Past tense. He is not dangerous anymore. Just a man in a cell, with nothing but time to regret his choices. We stood in silence, watching clouds move across a perfect blue sky. Eventually, Elena excused herself, walking back to her car. The divorce had been finalized last week. She was rebuilding, slowly, but rebuilding. I have something for you, Vincent said when we were alone. He pulled out an envelope, worn and creased. David gave this to me 15 years ago. Said I should give it to you when the time was right, when you'd proven yourself worthy of his legacy. My hands shook as I took it inside. A letter in my father's handwriting. Dear Marcus, if you are reading this, I am gone. And if Vincent is the one who gave it to you, it means he kept his word to protect you when I couldn't. I know you'll have questions about my work, my secrets, the life I kept hidden. I am sorry, I couldn't share it with you while I was alive. I wanted to protect you from the darkness I'd seen. But I also knew that someday, you might need to walk into that darkness yourself. Vincent Castellano is not a perfect man. He has made mistakes, terrible ones, but he is trying to be better. That effort, that constant struggle toward redemption, is what makes someone worthy of trust. Not their past, but their present choices. If you are working with him, if you've uncovered the truth I spent years documenting, then you've already proven you have something I always hoped you'd inherit: the courage to fight for justice, even when the cost is high. I am proud of you, Marcus. I always have been. And whatever happens next, remember, honor isn't about being right. It is about protecting what matters, even when you are afraid. With love. Dad. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't try to hide them. He knew, I whispered. He knew everything that would happen. Not everything. Vincent said gently. He couldn't have predicted you'd be brave enough to see it through. That was all you, Marcus. I folded the letter carefully, putting it back in its envelope. Someday, I'd frame it, hang it in my office, where I could see it every day and remember what courage looked like. What now? I asked. Vincent smiled. Genuine, warm, nothing predatory about it. Now we honor him, continue his work. I've been legitimizing my operations, cutting ties with anything David would have disapproved of. It is difficult, but necessary. And the 15 men, they follow my lead. If I choose honor, they choose honor. He glanced at the silent figures behind us. Your father saved 17 lives the day he gave me a second chance. Mine, Gabriella's, and everyone who has benefited from my legitimate businesses. That is a legacy worth protecting. We turned to leave, walking down the path between headstones. The 15 men fell into step behind us. Not threatening, just present. A reminder that some debts transcend death. Vincent, I said as we reached our cars, thank you. For everything, for keeping Dad's secrets, for protecting Elena, for helping me find the truth. The debt is paid, he said simply, but the friendship, that is just beginning if you'll have it. I extended my hand. He shook it firmly. Friends, I agreed. But I am watching you. One step back toward the life Dad pulled you from, and I'll take you down myself. Vincent laughed. A real laugh full of genuine amusement. I'd expect nothing less from David Sinclair's son. He'd be proud, Marcus, of both of us. I drove away from the cemetery as the sun set over Connecticut, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. In my rearview mirror, Vincent stood by his car, watching me leave. 15 men surrounded him, but he looked less like a mob boss and more like a man who'd finally found peace. Me father had spent his life believing people could change, that redemption was possible, even for those who seemed beyond saving. Looking at Vincent Castellano, reformed criminal loyal friend, keeper of impossible promises, I understood now that my father had been right. Some debts could never be fully repaid, but they could be honored. Every single day, through choices made and darkness resisted. That was justice. The kind worth fighting for, the kind worth dying for, the kind my father had believed in until his very last breath. And now, so did I.